participation process. So within the last year, we've enhanced processes for the Cayuga Lake Modeling Project and the hydrilla eradication program. So the rationale for providing public comment periods for public to provide added value to regulators, new information, different perspectives. So effective public comment relies upon right to know. One is able to obtain the relevant information necessary for an informed comment, and the right to participate, addressing barriers to full participation by those who may be impacted. In this proceeding, the Records Access Officer for the PSC has permitted all parties an exemption from disclosure on mere assertion of private interest. So there's no way that you can challenge, and as we saw, that there were some comments that people over-redacted, but this was not raised by the records officer. So the PSC is an unelected regulatory body delegated to protect the public interest in energy matters. So we intend with others that are participating in this press conference to work in the coming months to make the PSC more accountable and transparent in this proceeding. Okay, we'll have our first speaker, Joe.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joe Wilson. Thank you for coming. Thank you to elected officials and other officials who've taken time from your demanding schedules to be here either to speak or to listen to us. I live in Dryden. My wife and I are retired. We live on a fixed income. I'm frustrated and angry by the way the information about gasification of the Cayuga Power Plant and NYSEG's proposed transmission line upgrade has been kept from me and the rest of the public. I've spent hours and hours, and my wife will tell you more hours, on the PSC website and elsewhere, trying to figure out what these options will cost me and my wife now and in the future, especially when virtually inevitably natural gas prices, fracked gas prices, go up. What the PSC and the parties have done is to hide this information from me and the rest of the public. They are hiding it behind confidentiality requests and the so-called redaction process, where information submitted by the parties is blacked out before the public can see it. This is Cayuga Power's offering. It is redacted, 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 and redacted.
Looks like the same page printed over and over again.
Right. Despite hundreds of pages of redaction, Exhibit A, working with other concerned ratepayers, it looks like the following facts are true. First, the underlying reliability problem can be fixed by the transmission line upgrade proposed by NYSEG and that alone. Second, the cost of gasifying Cayuga Power is staggering, probably upwards of $500 million, that's with a B, $billion. $370 million for gasification itself, $90 million for a new pipeline somewhere here in Tompkins County, $30 million a year to keep the plant open until the transmission line upgrades are completed. Third, after gasification, the most Cayuga Power Plant would be needed is about 21 days per year, probably less. 21 days per year is 6% of a calendar year. Fourth, without NYSEG's transmission lines, you can fire the Cayuga Power Plant with gas or coal, or biomass, or kindling fuel. The electricity's not going anywhere. The transmission line upgrade has to be done. As it stands now, $500 million for electricity, which is needed at most 6% of the time and probably less, is a huge and seemingly needless expense. To all us ratepayers, whether you're like me and my wife on a fixed income, or whether you've got a whole bunch of income, it's all the same. It's a whole lot of money. That increase in rates, whatever it turns out to be, is also going to be a large expense to businesses, at least as proportionally great as it will be to us individual ratepayers. And one thing we certainly know from all of the rhetoric we've heard from elsewhere, if you raise business expenses, you kill jobs. All of this makes me wonder why the PSC has kept this information hidden. Facts are better than suppositions and guesses, aren't they? I call on the PSC now to provide us with unredacted information on the costs of Cayuga's gasification and the transmission line upgrade both. And I call on the PSC to extend its comment deadline so that we can review and digest the unredacted information and have the time to make the kind of informed and fact-based comments that they claim they want to have from us and the public. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Marie McCrae. I'm a resident of Dryden and a NYSEG electric ratepayer. I consider the process that the New York Public Service Commission is following to reach a decision on the future of the Cayuga Power Plant to be seriously flawed. By redacting important parts of their proposal, the Cayuga Operating Company is keeping the public in the dark. At the same time, the Public Service Commission is asking us to comment on the merits of the choices they've offered. It's a false choice with little information. For instance, I know that any plan to burn fossil gas to generate 300 megawatts of electricity, even if, as Joe has said, it's only generated for 500 hours a year as they project, that would require construction of a new gas pipeline to deliver the fuel. But when we ask where the pipeline will go, or when we read the overly redacted proposal, there are no answers. Cayuga Operating Company spokespeople have said things such as, oh, it'll go into Ellis Hollow, or maybe it will run up to Auburn. The answer that's been spoken most often goes something like this. Well, it'll probably run 18 miles into Freeville and connect with the Dominion line there. Where exactly will it connect to the Dominion line? By how much will the rights of way be widened to do that? Will that be done using eminent domain? Will there be a new compressor station in Freeville, spewing pollution and noise 24 hours a day? And how much more will you and I pay on our electric bill to do this? The citizens of Lansing, Dryden, and the rest of Tompkins County do not have enough information. The only thing certain right now is that NYSEG's electric customers will be paying hundreds of millions of dollars to construct a pipeline to fuel a converted, privately owned power generation plant that will have its output utilized only 5% of the year. I call on the PSC to provide unredacted documents that include the route of the pipeline and the costs of the plans so that the public can make an informed decision. Further, I ask for an extension of the public comment period so that we can adequately assess that information to make informed comments. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Don Barber. I'm the supervisor from the town of Caroline. And as a public official, I'm very aware of process. And I often think of one of our founders of the U.S. government. His name was Thomas Jefferson, and these are his words. Whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government. That whenever things get so far wrong as to attract their notice, they may be relied on to set them straight.
Okay.
The public service handling of this case is the antithesis of Thomas Jefferson's assertion. The terms that come to my mind are secrecy and short-sightedness. Regarding secrecy, the redactions are pervasive in the released documents from both NYSEG and Cayuga Power Plant. Critical economic and environmental data that the public needs to make an informed judgment have been removed. The legal requirement to justify these redactions has been ignored. The documents don't address the high variability in natural gas prices, which in recent years have gone from an all-time high to currently 1/4 of that amount. What assumptions were used in the economic analysis? And what are the risks to the ratepayers when the price of this volatile commodity takes off again? What properties and what ecosystems will be impacted by the new gas pipeline? How will the capital cost to reconfigure the Cayuga Power Plant affect the ratepayers? How does the cost of repower compare to the cost of upgrading the grid? Does authorizing the project keep electric rates just and reasonable, as is the requirement of the Public Service Commission? And regarding short-sightedness, 100 years ago, we didn't have centralized energy production. We were burning little fossil fuel, and our climate was much different than it is today. Both Cayuga Lake and Beebe Lake froze over every winter. Since then, we have created an atmosphere that traps heat from the sun, resulting in hotter temperatures, expanding deserts, raging forest fires, rising seas, and vanishing ice packs. This discussion around this power plant and all power plants should begin with, are they sustainable or even practical, given the rapid climate change we are experiencing? As a state, we have serious discussions to make right now that will affect the economy and the environment, both in the short term and the long term. Until we have those discussions and those deliberations, we are just kicking the can down the road. And unfortunately, that can holds our children's future. The Public Service Commission should be exploring renewable alternatives, not limiting the repowering options to replacing one global warming fossil fuel with yet another. The Public Service Commission should look for solutions that reduce energy consumption. They should be using their authority to broker a demand response compact with Nucor Steel, so that in trade for the energy subsidies that Nucor receives, they agree to reduce their energy consumption during those 500 hours of peak demand each year. So I ask the PSC to end the secrecy and follow Thomas Jefferson's advice and engage the public in solving this problem. I ask the PSC to release unredacted documents, then extend the comment period to allow the public to consider a range of options with information that they deserve. I ask the PSC to look to options to reduce energy consumption first, before burdening the ratepayers with costly upgrades. And finally, I ask the PSC that if repowering is necessary, solicit proposals for renewable energy solutions to provide the power that is needed. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Herb Engman. I'm the town supervisor of the town of Ithaca. And when Brian first contacted me to see if he could reserve this room for this meeting, I was a little nervous because the county legislature recently got criticized for their elegant new quarters. And I mean, we have marble walls, we have vaulted ceilings, but I am very happy to welcome you here. Local government officials know that our residents pay many costs, including taxes, including fees, including rates for water and sewer, and yes, for public utilities like electricity. So therefore, those costs ought to be included in our discussions about the total cost to our residents. The current proposals before us seem to force all the ratepayers, to subsidize the continuation of the current plan. If all ratepayers are being asked to pay, then any retrofit proposed should meet sustainability goals. Coal and gas are not sustainable, and they certainly are not environmentally friendly. The process should be opened up to other options, such as biomass, perhaps in combination with other technologies. This would be a great opportunity for the proposed Center of Excellence to study this issue, or even the Cornell Sustainability Center, to do research to show whether there's any potential for any retrofit and whether that would be viable. But for that research and subsequent conversation to take place, the PSC process must be made more transparent and time left to thoroughly investigate all of the possibilities. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Linda Levine. I am a member of the Town Board of Dryden, New York. Dryden is clearly impacted by this situation, potentially, given the lack of information or disinformation. It's sometimes hard to tell. And we're also blessed with people like Marie and Joe in the town of Dryden who are endlessly putting in time toward finding out information for us and helping us in our job. At our agenda meeting last week, we discussed these issues and their implications for our town. The lack of transparency results in we, the government of the town of Dryden, having no information or disinformation about something that profoundly affects the people of our town. There are potential environmental issues for a pipeline that could go through Dryden, and where would it go? There are issues of eminent domain, which are of serious concern to the people of Dryden, and again, we are given no information. Also troubling to us is the lack of information about potential costs, as it would appear that there are three things that are certain: death, taxes, and NYSEG bills.
I am not blessed with a good voice, so thanks, Brian, for this. I'm Julie Kiefer. I'm in my 20th year as a county legislator in Tompkins. I represent the villages of Lansing and Cayuga Heights. I have an even longer track record as an environmental activist, and I got my start opposing a nuclear power plant on Cayuga Lake. That was back around 1970. I've followed utility issues ever since. I agree with previous speakers in that the PSC's options for us to consider are amazingly limited. It's unnecessary to limit them. I think it's unwise to limit them that way, but that's what they've done. Because Cayuga is a coal plant, and electricity generated from coal in recent years has been much more expensive than that generated from gas, which is at an all-time low. Cayuga Station has not found buyers in the daily or hourly market and has been uneconomical to run for months now. We are supporting its continuation. We ratepayers now to allow the PSC to figure out what to do for our reliability issue, which is a major issue. In my view, the paramount issue should be New York's energy future, not the tax base in Lansing or the school taxes, even though those are extremely important items for local and state politicians. Until today, the PSC has mainly heard from press releases of elected officials who one way or another represent Lansing residents. And those elected officials have been responding in favor of repowering with gas to keep the local tax base up. It's an easy position for local politicians to take. It's harder not to take that position. But keeping the tax base up is not the whole story. You've already heard today from the town of Ithaca supervisor, you've heard from the town of Dryden supervisor. The town of Ulysses has already passed a detailed resolution saying why they do not support repowering with gas and why they support the transmission upgrade. You heard from the Tompkins County League of Women Voters in a separate article in the newspaper. They agree with the positions of not repowering with natural gas. They agree with upgrading the transmission line, and they stress renewables. The comments by Joe Wilson were very broad, and I want to emphasize that I do agree with him. The high utility costs have a disproportionate impact on low-income residents and people who have income that is fixed. So, as has been pointed out by other speakers, there is really no way for low-income people and limited income people with no flexibility in their income to participate meaningfully in this proceeding. I was going to talk about redaction, but that has been so well illustrated already. I guess I'd like to conclude my remarks by saying that I believe climate change is an existential threat, and we absolutely have to go to renewables as soon as possible. The conclusion I reach is clearly that since electricity is going to be part of our way of life for the foreseeable future, it has to have a transmission system, an electric grid system that we can rely on. So it's simple to choose the transmission line upgrade. I am now privileged to be able to quote somebody else who is not here to give his comments. These are comments by Tim Mount, who is a professor in the Dyson School of Applied Economics and Management at Cornell. Tim's research and teaching interests include econometric modeling and policy analysis relating to the use of fuels and electricity and to their environmental consequences. Professor Mount is currently conducting research on the restructuring of markets for electricity and the implications for price behavior in auctions for electricity, which is what Cayuga generating facility has to enter. The rates and charges to customers, which is what you've been hearing a lot about today. Investment decisions for maintaining system reliability, which is basic for all of us. And renewable and distributed sources of energy. And I'm going to read Tim's written remarks now. Under normal circumstances, in a deregulated utility system, which is what we have, a decision to repower a generating unit would be based on commercial considerations. Will the revenue generated by selling energy in the wholesale electricity market be sufficient to cover the operating costs and also provide an adequate return on the investment? The financial risk of making this type of investment is borne by the investors. In some special cases, maintaining the reliability of the power grid is the main justification for making a particular investment. And in that situation, the financial risk is passed on to the utilities customers in the rates they pay. The cost of the investment and any shortfall in operating cost is put in the rate base and increases the retail rates for all customers because the investment itself is not economically viable. You've heard people talk today about the inability to test for themselves whether the proposals are economically viable. We don't have that chance, although Professor Mount clearly thinks that that information is necessary. He goes on to say, the justification for repowering a Cayuga generating facility depends primarily on whether its continued operation is needed to maintain the reliability of the grid. Consequently, NYSEG's customers have a stake in this decision because they will end up paying the bill. All system operators and regulators of the grid put a very high premium on maintaining reliability. When it comes to reliability, it is unlikely that any corners will be cut. Hence, NYSEG's proposed alternative way to maintain reliability by upgrading transmission capacity is almost certainly technically viable. Even though the relevant information is redacted in the public version of NYSEG's report on Cayuga repowering analysis, their conclusion clearly favors upgrading transmission over repowering the Cayuga generating facility. This conclusion indicates that upgrading transmission is the least expensive alternative for NYSEG's customers and is also a viable way to maintain the grid's reliability. I'm greatly comforted that I reached the same conclusion as Professor Mount with much less technical expertise. Thank you.
My name is Helen Slache. I'm an attorney with Community Environmental Defense Council here in Ithaca, and I am the last speaker. So I will also be quick. So we're here today because Governor Cuomo, acting through his 5 hand-picked PSC commissioners, has presented us, the NYSEG retail ratepayers, with a classic false choice dodge. Transmission upgrades or the repowering of the Cayuga plant. In focusing the public's attention on this false choice, the governor is attempting to deflect public consideration of the real issue here, how to best meet our energy needs. And are we going to solve a transmission reliability issue with the construction of a fossil fuel generation station? How is it that we are even considering forcing ratepayers to pay for construction of a non-competitive, quote-unquote, out-of-market fossil fuel power plant operated for profit by private institutional investors? And more importantly, why won't the power plant operators who are asking the public to pay for this new power plant at least tell us what it's going to cost? And why won't the PSC insist that the operators disclose the proposed location of the new methane pipeline, particularly, again, since we're paying for it? These are among the many failures of this PSC proceeding and must be addressed and answered in order to determine the most appropriate plan before they force NYSEG ratepayers to go out of pocket for hundreds of millions of dollars, and as we've heard, perhaps $500 million in costs. The PSC has a legal obligation to make financial and environmental information available to the public. Decisions like this are too important and impose too high a burden on ratepayers to be made behind closed doors and with purposeful exclusion of full public disclosure. Thank you.
To keep that to half an hour, and if you had the press had some specific questions of people here, or if they'd prefer to interview people separately after the conclusion of this proceeding, is there any questions from the press? All right, then I guess we will conclude this event. Thank you very much.